The Fed Upward Podcast, a place for federal employees and friends of feds to find strategies and tactics to navigate everyday problems.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
From launch pads to research labs, civilian Fed life leads to many places, all covered by WAEPA. WAEPA offers fully portable group term life insurance for current and former civilian Feds. This coverage answers whatever life brings, with benefits that follow wherever service calls. WAEPA. For Feds, by Feds.
Hi, this is Love Rutledge, host of the Fed Upward Podcast, continuing the series in conjunction with Globally's Shaping America's Next 25 Summit. My next guest is Dr. Nola Haynes. She's a longtime federal employee, academic, and a leading voice in new media. Dr. Haynes, thank you so much for coming on the Fed Upward Podcast.
Thank you, Love. I think this is my second time, right? It's
Yeah.
some years.
It has.
I think we were in the COVID days.
Yes, absolutely. It has been a minute. So I want to ask you some questions about making transitions in and out of federal government. Right now, this is a time where tons of federal employees are either considering a move or they've been forced to make a move that maybe wasn't of their choice. You've come in and out of government and you obviously have some very specialized expertise. What advice do you have for federal employees who maybe are looking to pivot to a different kind of career right now?
Oh, that's a big question. Pivot is the word du jour because right now it's one thing where administrations change over and people leave, they go in and out, and then you go to a think tank or civil society or industry. But sitting here as a Black woman, as a woman, things are looking a little different now with anti-DEI backlash. And when you show up anywhere wanting a job outside of your traditional space, you are automatically seen through that lens. So this is a new situation that a lot of people are in, including myself, where people are either retreating from hiring new people. I'm hearing that a lot, or they're just not responding. And I am very grateful to those companies and organizations that are standing up to the moment and not buying into this really kind of awfulness with the anti-DEI backlash. But for your specific question, the one thing that I would say is this is also a time to figure out who you are and what you want to do. You know, like a lot of people, I didn't come to the federal government young. You know, like a lot of folks straight out of college, grad school, you go into the federal government. In the Black community, we say, get that good government job. So that wasn't my trajectory. So I came into the federal government because I was an academic and I was talent scouted, right? So that's a different kind of way. But I think the outcome is the same. Now that I am formally separated from Department of State, no longer on the International Security Advisory Board, it's like, okay, what's my purpose here now in DC, right? So I've always had a media component paralleling to my academic work. And so I'm leaning more into that now in a very different way. And I am finding a lot of satisfaction in that. So that is to say, figure out what you kind of like outside of showing up to one of the brown buildings every day, and maybe kind of explore that. But I would say first, take a breath, right? Do all the things you need to do. Take a vacation, screen, box, whatever you need to do, do it. And then do that thing you've always wanted to do. Fulfill that curiosity, and that will most likely lead you to your next destination.
Fantastic advice. I think a lot of us are trying to figure out what our next chapters look like. And we might be thinking we need to find the next organization we're working for, when really we need to think about the mission we want to support. And we can do that in a variety of ways in a multitude of sectors. So speaking of different sectors, having been and being an academic and having been a federal employee, what do you wish feds knew about academics, and what do you wish academics knew about feds?
You know, the funny part is I am actually writing a book about all of this in the context of new media. And there's more that intersects than dissects, right? And one of the things being they're both traditional spaces. So traditional in the sense that there's a hierarchy and you do things a specific way, right? So when I was in my PhD program, I was doing media, but I was trying to keep it on the low. Like I didn't want like my advisors and everybody to find out because I didn't want them to think that I wasn't taking my work and my research seriously. And also with the federal government, you can have different restrictions on, what you can say, where you can say it. So there are constraints and restrictions. So in that regard, I find similarities. Now, what I will say is there is a level of freedom of sorts that you have as an academic. I remember feeling more freer to say what I wanted to say inside the classroom. But then when I started pivoting towards the federal government, that constraint became even tighter, right? So while there is hierarchy in the academy, there is a level of freedom. Now, that comes with a cost, right? Where in the federal government, the constraints look very different. You might lose your job if you say something, the wrong thing, on a public platform. And I would also say that I think that federal government workers, especially in the policy realm, should go teach a class or two. And I think vice versa. And I'm going to tell you why. There is such a huge gap between theory and policy. I mean, it is like Mediterranean type of gap. It is massive. The two need to come together and not just in silos. And the students would benefit so much more. And then also the policy work would benefit so much more.
Absolutely. I mean, fantastic advice. If we had more permeability between federal service and other sectors, I think we'd all be better off. And that's something I hope we'll see in the coming years as rules change and flex for civil service employment. Some of the good things that may come out of the changes we're seeing now are that it may be easier to come in and out. We'll see. Time will tell. But I think we would all be better off if we could have careers that looked more diverse, more varied, and we could attract more talent out of either academia or the private sector for sure. And speaking of making those pivots and going back and forth between these different realms, having a personal brand is really important. And that's something that you and I have talked about. I feel like I've tried to build a personal brand through this podcast, totally relate to the things that you just mentioned about being, restricted in some ways while you're a federal employee. That's really important. But having a personal brand is really important as well. And you always show up either in academic settings, professional organization events, or in the federal space looking and sounding fabulous. So tell me and my listeners how you have developed your personal brand and style.
Well, thank you. As I'm sitting here looking at your fabulous shoes, they are fab, guys. You got to see these shoes. It's a combination of things. One, growing up in the South, and I think about my mom and my aunts and my grandmothers, more the women, less of the men. Although my grandfather did not leave his house without a fresh pair of Stacey Adams. There's this pride that resonates through how you look. Now, there's also some other stuff behind that, especially coming out of the Deep South. There's this very harmful trope that Black folks, we weren't clean and all these things. So in pushing back on that narrative, people like my grandmother's age, my mom's age and beyond, they overcompensated for that, right? So not only can you not leave your house looking like $1 million, if you're not up and dressed by 6 a.m., then you're lazy. It's like all these things that kind of go into this kind of post-slavery Jim Crow kind of thinking. But what I will say is what my mom did specifically, when she wasn't feeling at her best, that's when she showed up looking her best. And so for my mom, being fabulous was almost like a suit of armor. And so I adopted that without even realizing it. I remember one day I was talking to a group of grad students, and I remember saying to them how icky I felt throughout that entire process when I was in grad school. And so then one of the students said, well, you always look fabulous. It's like, well, that lets you know just how horrible I was feeling. But by me articulating that, I kind of shed that part of it, right? Because it comes in different stages, where now it's just genuinely a part of who I am. And so many women that I encounter, they tell me, I no longer feel like I need to show up to this place looking masculine or dialing down my femininity, or I can take my hair out of a bun, I can put on red lipstick. Because in my personal opinion, Love, if you are sitting on the other side judging me because I may look too quote unquote girly, that's a you thing. That's not a me thing, right? Because I'm going to walk out the room feeling fabulous and I might even twirl, because I mean, a woman should be able to show up however you want to. But I think that this construct of women appearing more masculine means you're more serious is harmful. I think it's harmful, especially to young women, if you grow up with that type of programming, right? Because then if you decide to make another choice that counters that, you're having like this turmoil, you're having this battle within yourself, like, oh, I won't be taken seriously. I won't get this job. I'll say this, because of the way that I show up, you may not know my name, but you're going to want to know my name. That's also part of the strategy, right? Whatever space you are in, I've been told by mentors, you want everybody to know your name. And one of the ways that you leave that lasting impression is how you show up in the space that you take up. You don't shrink. You know what I mean? You don't buy some, no shade to TJ Maxx, but you can buy suits elsewhere other than TJ Maxx. I'm just saying, that's also cost effective. But the feminine is so strong and so powerful. And the fact that we have been taught to kind of leave that behind, I'm sorry, I'm not here for it. I am not here for it. So part of my brand is not only just to show up looking fabulous, but also having a reason why and a narrative around why femininity is also, if not more powerful than showing up looking masculine.
That was like a master class in thinking about personal branding, how you want to show up and how you want to present yourself as you are thinking about future employment and everything else in this world, right? So thank you so much for that. These are the kind of topics we don't talk about a lot, especially in the federal workplace. I think a lot of us wear our bureaucratic front uniforms, right? Because it's easy to do, but you just gave us some really great things to think about in terms of new rules for how we want to show up either inside the federal space or outside as we recreate ourselves if we're leaving the federal space. Now, you are embarking on a somewhat new journey. You have always been out on social media and making your voice heard because you have a lot of expertise in the national security space. You're doing more of that now. Tell me where people can find you if they want to hear more about your next steps in your professional journey and your opinions on national security issues.
Well, everywhere I am, it's very simple. It's at Nola Haynes. So that's Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. I just started Substack like a week ago, but I'm really happy to announce that Terrell Starr and I, the very popular and famous independent journalist who lives in Ukraine, we are starting a podcast together, and it's going to be on Substack. That's going to be called Terrell and Dr. Nola. And I also have a show on Instagram Live called Nightcap every Tuesdays at 8 p.m. through the Persist Network. So you can follow the Persist Network. You can follow me at Nola Haynes. But I'm going to start contributing more of my kind of intellectual thinking on Substack, because I think that's a really good platform for that. And also I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered every Thursday from 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm a busy lady. She is really booked and busy. And also thinking about big and complicated things too, that I can fit in my pretty little brain. Sorry, being catty. Well, thank you so much, Love. This was wonderful. I always love talking to you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, always fun. And quick shout out, since you mentioned the shoes, I have to mention my former boss, mentor, and friend, Kimberly Jackson, who is now at Rand, who made me start buying Sarah Flint shoes. So Kimberly, I blame that all on you. Thanks so much, Dr. Haynes, for coming back on the Fed Upward podcast and for everything you do to support globally and other professional organizations that need voices like yours.
Thank you. And I just want to say to your audience, I know that there is a little bit of chaos right now and people are rethinking their next steps. This is really a time for you to be you, right? For you to figure out who that person is, because I can guarantee you one thing that the world doesn't have is you. We are all unique and we all have something unique to contribute. So figure out what that is, lean into it. And one thing I will say is something that is very scary for people who work in traditional places with a lot of infrastructure is stepping out of that and having to learn how to become entrepreneurs. And that feels daunting, right? Take it one step at a time and do not be afraid to mess up. If you get it wrong, admit it, try it again. This is the time of opportunity. And so look at this moment of chaos as actually a moment of opportunity for you to do that thing that you've probably always wanted to do.
That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for your time. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did.
ClearanceJobs, the leading digital network for cleared professionals, has launched fedwork.net, connecting federal employees with news, insights, and community. The public forum serves as an extension of the ClearanceJobs career community, empowering feds to stay connected and informed. Visit fedwork.net to search and start discussions, and create a free profile at clearancejobs.com to find your next cleared role.
Thanks for listening, friends. If you liked what you heard today, I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. To join my mailing list, head over to fedupwardcoaching.com/podcast. Talk soon.